Welcome back to The Local Perspective. I'm Jerry Deshane, the Executive Director of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on the League a little bit. We had Kurt Watinsky in here a few months ago, and I don't know why, but people like Kurt. I'm looking at Gail Sumi over there. There's just something about Kurt. Well, we have another amazing new person that you're going to get to know, and you're really going to enjoy working with. Today I'm talking with Maria Davis. Maria is the Assistant Legal Counsel for the League of Municipalities, and what that means is that she's one of those voices that you're going to hear when your city council says, hey, go ask the League about that if you would. Maria, good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the League.
Thank you.
So you're an attorney, or we wouldn't have hired you. Let's start this way. Before we get into what it is you're doing and going to be doing, give us just a little background. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? That sort of thing.
Well, I'm from Michigan. I'm a Michigander. I grew up in Northville, Michigan, which is like a mid-sized community about 20 minutes outside of Ann Arbor.
Okay.
And with that proximity, I grew up a Michigan fan, University of Michigan, and that is where I went to undergrad. So
You're a Wolverine?
I am. Go Blue, always.
Did we know this?
You did.
Yes, we did. But at least it's a Midwest team.
Yeah.
But they've got Jim Harbaugh.
I know. He kind of needs to step it up a little bit.
Well, we can talk to him about that.
Yeah, the rest of my family are Spartans, so.
Ooh, so you've got like a whole internal family feud thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, during my time at Michigan was one of our worst sports tenures, and so the holidays were rough. I didn't have a lot of comebacks.
A friend of mine went to the UW during one of those periods, I think the early 1980s, before Barry Alvarez. And one of their favorite cheers used to be, yeah, but we scored first.
Yeah.
That was the only highlight of the game, apparently. So you're in Wisconsin, working for the League of Municipalities. First of all, why law? Why did you choose to go into law?
You know, there wasn't really one defining moment. I definitely went through that younger phase of I want to be this, that, a rock star, what have you.
You want to be, was it Atticus Finch, or you want to be Ruth Ginsburg?
Right. So, I just kind of, I think, developed a little organically, and being from an Italian family, I always enjoy a healthy debate. So that's,
they don't call them debates in Italian families.
That's the PC term.
We're arguing over the dinner table.
Yeah, it's only quiet when you're eating. But to me, the law, I've just always kind of been fascinated by it, and it's a little bit of a puzzle to me. I really enjoy, dissecting a statute or interpreting what the meaning of a word is. To me, that's just a lot of fun. It's really interesting, it's intriguing, and you kind of get to put the pieces together the way you think that they should fit. And that part's just always kind of drawn me to it.
Okay.
Just kind of wanting to know what you can do, what you can't do, and the policy behind it.
Did you, was this like from when you were a little girl, from when you were in high school? Did you always know you were drawn to the law? Was this always the plan? Or did you want to be, I don't know, a nun, and then sort of change your mind at the last minute?
I don't know the exact time that it started. I mean, it's been long enough that it was a long-term goal,
Okay.
And probably long enough that I couldn't really, at the beginning, articulate why. There's just an interest there. I would say probably since I was, 10 to 12 years old.
Okay.
Definitely through high school, it was always the plan.
You're way more decisive than I am. When I graduated from high school, I didn't even know the job that I do today existed. What's an association? What's a league? Never mind, long story. So, but the law's got a whole lot of different facets. I mean, some people want to be a litigator. Some people want to be a researcher. Other people want to defend or prosecute. You haven't been a lawyer that long, but what part of it appeals to you the most?
Well, I went to law school actually thinking, a part of me at least, wanting to be a criminal defense attorney. Why? I'm not sure. I think I just had a little bit different idea.
Kind of heroic, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you watch the movies and you think everything's like the movies, even just practicing law in general. That's what you think it's going to be like. And I think a lot of why litigation appealed to me prior to law school is being a little more uninformed. I thought transactional law would be boring. And then getting to law school and kind of experiencing a little bit more of what that setting would look like, I found that to be really interesting. And not for a really defined reason. I just kind of decided that litigation wasn't really for me, that the transactional setting and the business setting was really interesting. And then my first summer after my 1L year, I clerked for a city attorney's office in Michigan, and that was my first main introduction to municipal law. And it was fascinating. I mean, the variety of the things that I experienced were so interesting. And so that kind of opened up a new door for me.
You've already jumped into my next question.
Sorry.
Which was why? No, that's fine. Although I will pause and point out here. Gail, are there any movies about league directors? No wonder nobody wants to do this for a living. We could try. Never mind. Okay, fine. So what I do is boring. So you spent a summer clerking for a city attorney. What kinds of things as a clerk or an intern? Intern, clerk, I forget. What's
Technically,
the right term?
it was a clerk, but I mean, more or less the same thing.
What kinds of things were you working on there? Trying to figure out why Michigan wasn't as cool as Wisconsin? Just saying.
So we would kind of research any, smaller problems that would come in, or issues rather, that would be assigned to us. One thing I helped with was doing some research on kind of like animal control ordinances. There was a pet store that had become problematic for various reasons. And so I researched other cities comparable in size and to see how they handled pet regulations and what would or wouldn't be possible. So ordinance issues, I didn't really draft much because it was just a summer. And then one of the big things was in Michigan, the student practice rule allows you to go on record in court your first year rather than your second year. Yeah.
So you actually got some real life experience, if you will.
Yeah. And in Michigan, it was for a district court, so that handles misdemeanors as well. So it's not just civil ordinances. So it'd just be a lot of low level misdemeanor type cases, and by case, I mean really you're just handling initial appearances on behalf of the city. So that was definitely a highlight, being able to actually appear in court on the record, and it was a big deal for me.
So did that, you're handling these misdemeanor criminal cases, did that sort of cement your decision that, I don't want to be a defense attorney?
It was, in the moment, it was still very intriguing.
Because it's new.
Right. But yes, in the long term, it just wasn't where the bulk of my interest lied.
Okay. I do have to ask, you talked about a pet store that became problematic. How does a pet store become problematic?
Oh gosh, I shouldn't have mentioned that because the details, it was several years ago.
And they're unpleasant? Should we not go there?
I think the gist of it was, there were just too many pets. I can't remember the exact details, but it was an operational issue.
Yeah.
And
like a horse farm where they're not properly caring for the animals.
And exotic animals, exotic animals were a part of it because people...
Not creepy things.
No, but people don't understand the commitment involved with some of the more unique pets that you might have, like how long a parrot might live. And so it was all kind of tied up in that and things like that.
Okay. So you went to law school, you did your work there, you started to get a little bit of exposure to municipal law. Now you jump over to the better side of Lake Michigan. Now you're in Wisconsin. And you started your career working for the city of Madison, is that correct? What did you do for Madison?
Well, with Madison, I actually started as a legal extern. And how that's different from an intern is I worked for credit. So they didn't pay me. I got class credit in exchange for the amount of hours that I worked in the office. And I was really excited about that opportunity because I was looking for a way. I did a real estate law concentration in law school. And so I was looking for a way to get a little more of the practical side of real estate as opposed to just purely a legal perspective that I would get in class. And I reached out and they actually agreed to have me as their first extern. So it was a little bit of uncharted territory for both parties involved. But I started as an extern and then I transitioned to an intern and then into a full-time employee. And as an extern, what I started with was a lot of contract drafting, which I continued to do really throughout my whole time with the city. The real estate contracts that would go along with the various real estate transactions for the city, whether it's leasing land as the lessor or the lessee. Typically the city is the lessor. Licensing, and that was usually for telecommunications companies, which would be them putting, Verizon or AT&T putting antennas on most often city water towers. We would also do easements, encroachments, which is a private permanent improvement in the public right-of-way.
And they're always happy to get a letter from the city attorney on that.
Yes, that can sometimes come as a surprise.
Well, and that, let's detour on that for a few minutes. As I recall, the city of Madison had quite a challenge with that. And basically, we're talking about somebody putting a shed or a garage in the right-of-way, on the back of their yard or something like that. Are there a lot of those out there, and is that pretty easy for people to do?
Well, I do know that the city of Madison has granted a lot of privileges in streets. I didn't handle that personally. One of my coworkers spearheaded that, the majority of those documents and arrangements. But I don't know if easy, there are fees associated with it. It's definitely doable. It's something that if you apply and you meet all the requirements that are, attached to whatever it is you're hoping to do, you will probably be granted approval for it. But the way Madison has structured it with their ordinance, there's fees, insurance, and liability requirements, which that can sometimes be a little steep. So it really depends, I guess, who's behind it. If it's just a fence for your yard, it might be a little costly for what you're getting out of it. If it's for a business, it might be a little more realistic to cover the cost of it.
So along the way, I mean, you're new in your legal career here. You're doing real estate transactions. Didn't you ever want to work in a real estate firm? I mean, kind of an LA law type thing. Be a multimillionaire, which I don't know if they told you probably won't be at the league. If I burst a balloon there, I'm sorry.
I really enjoyed working at the city and kind of being connected to my surroundings. It was really...
Well, now, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's a little bit, what drew me to real estate is also what draws me just to municipal law in general. Not only the variety that you encounter, there's so many different facets of real estate and facets of municipal law. I mean, you cover a variety of topics. Right. But it's the connection with the community that you get from it. When it's real estate, if I helped work on a city project that involved a building going up or something like that, or the water towers with the cell antennas on them. Now I can drive by and I say, oh, I know the backstory of how that got there, or the negotiations we had with the company for change and amendment they wanted to make to the license. And I just really like that context it gives to the community that I live and work in.
So you brought up cell tower or cell antenna siting. And as you know, that's been quite a challenge for the league on a legislative front, because they've pretty much given local governments very few tools for negotiating the siting of cell towers. Were you on both sides of that, both before that law and after that law, or was your work pretty much after that law came into force?
So you're talking about the law that handles the locations in the right-of-way?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not do much on the right-of-way. Madison was just kind of getting into that and still is in that process. So with the water towers, they're on more proprietary property.
Which you can negotiate like a landowner.
Yes, yeah. There's a little more, the city has more control over how how they attach, where they attach, and can attach more conditions to it.
Okay.
So.
Were you a tough negotiator, or were you a pushover? I mean,
I could be stubborn.
Well, what did you find that cell companies wanted that was hardest to give?
Well, I think the response time. They want a very fast turnaround with the technology changing as fast as it is. They need to do a lot of work at their various sites.
Right.
And sometimes with the city, there's just more to do than time to do it. And so, or you need to kind of develop a policy for how to handle things. And
Right, it's not like, this is not Maria Davis's water tower.
Right,
This is owned by a lot of people.
Right. So they can email me or contact this Office of Real Estate Services and say we want to do X, Y, and Z. And even if we think that's something that should be supported, there are other conversations that need to be had and potentially other approvals, from the Common Council. If it's something new, that needs to be authorized. So trying to navigate the timing issue was always challenging because the cell companies want to just go as fast as they can, which is understandable because they need to make their customers happy and keep up with technology. But the city and staff can only move as fast as they're able. So that was challenging, trying to explain, we're not forgetting about you, we're working on it, we just can't turn it around always as fast as that would be ideal.
Okay. It's kind of a never-ending refrain.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a private sector background, and it really does come down to they're used to working with an individual who owns and who doesn't have to answer to 250,000 voters. In case of Madison, 100,000 voters. So it's different. It's different. And was it a case that they didn't understand it, or were they understood it, but their attorney's job was to prod and get you to move as fast as she could?
I can't imagine Madison is the only city struggling with project load. So I think there's probably some understanding. And often we were actually working with representatives too from a third party that they would hire as a consultant or a representative through the process. But that's their job to try and get it done. So we understood it's your job to check in with me all the time and see how timing's going, see where things are at. And on the flip side, it's our job to do it as fast as we can, but let you know where we're at with it.
Now this, talking with Maria Davis, she's the new Assistant Legal Counsel at the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. And let's shift. I want to talk more about 5G, but let's kind of set that aside. You're several weeks with the league now, 3 weeks?
This is my third week.
You're in your third week. And your job, and for those of you that don't know, the two full-time attorneys at the league take, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000 phone calls a year, plus emails, plus training. And you're not the city of Brokaw, bad example, they're gone. You're not the city of Wausau's attorney, right?
Correct.
You're there to provide legal information.
Correct.
Can you sort of explain to folks what the difference is between I am providing you legal advice, no, I'm providing you legal information?
So, for instance, information would be to explain the meaning of a statute that you feel is clear. But if there were to be a gap in how it could be interpreted, that could sometimes fall into the advice territory. Or, you can follow a certain procedure, but whether or not you can follow two certain procedures, and if there's a choice, telling you which one we think is better falls more into the advice category, and that's really up to the municipal attorney.
You're here to say this is broadly what the law means.
Correct.
How you choose to apply it in your case is up to your municipal attorney.
Correct, when it's optional.
So let's back up a little bit here. What drew you to the league job? What interested you about it?
The fact that it was in the municipal setting kind of was an extension of where I was at working with the city, but into a more traditional legal role. I wanted to kind of transition back in the sense coming from law school to working as an attorney.
Right.
And kind of just building on my knowledge of municipal law. Like I said about what drew me to the law is being fascinated by what the law is.
Right.
I mean, there's no better way in my mind to learn all about that than acting as a staff attorney for the league, because that's part of our job.
You're going to hear it all.
Yeah, right.
Now, you're just starting. I don't think people realize Claire Silverman's been there 26, 27 years. Daniel Olson, your predecessor, had been there 17 years. It takes time to sort of build that book of wisdom or book of knowledge that you're going to have in your head. How do you feel you're doing on that? Do you feel like you're there yet?
Not even close. I tend to, Claire sets a really high bar in the best way possible. I mean, she just knows it all. And I tend to set high expectations for myself and expect them to be achieved right away.
I expect to know this now.
Right. And while I understand it's going to take me time and I agree with that, it's just going to be a process. I want to continue to build every week on my knowledge and my foundation, and I think with Claire as a guide, I'm very, very lucky.
You said, and I agree with you, Claire is absolutely amazing, but I used to introduce Claire as the person who knows more about Wisconsin law or Wisconsin municipal law than anyone. I said, there's nothing Claire doesn't know about Wisconsin law. And she came to me one day and she said, Jerry, stop introducing me that way. I said, why? I said, you do. You're amazing. She said, every time you say that, the very first question I get is something I've never heard of before. So I guess the lesson for you, Maria, is you're never going to have it all.
Right.
Now, you've participated in a few calls so far. What typically are people asking about? Where do they?
Well, let's see. There's been open meetings law, public records request. Let's see, what else have we had? Now I'm putting me on the spot and I'm drawing blanks.
No, that's
I have a whole notepad of notes.
Yeah, along with a book of statutes that's like that thick that I have to read and a municipal manual. But you've also gone to some of our training seminars. What was your sense of the people that was there? Something you saw that you didn't expect?
Well, there were a lot of new, I went to the local government 101, and almost the whole room was newly elected or newly in place in their position.
So you could say like, hey, sisters, you, me.
Right. We're all new. But I think what struck me is that they were really attentive and just kind of eager for the information. And it was nice. It was nice to see the engagement there.
One of the things that I still get a charge out of whenever I meet with our members is how real it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, our members have political feelings and they have strong feelings about sports teams and whatever. But when it comes to running local government, they're fairly pragmatic. I mean, do you get that sense? I know you're new, but they just want to get it done and do the best they can for their community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were questions where, the questions being asked not because they want to challenge something, because they think it should be done a different way, but just tell me how to do it. Tell me the right way to do it so I can do a good job. And I think that's really commendable.
What part of your job are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, being able to keep up with Claire.
Yeah.
No, I think just helping our members and, really not mastering the subject matter, but getting a handle on it and just being able to be a really valuable, hopefully, resource.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure you will be, absolutely. You have worked in Wisconsin, in Madison, one of second largest city. Your hometown you described as kind of a mid-size-ish city. Half of our members have a population of 1,400 or less. Have you talked to folks to get a sense of, is it different for smaller communities? Do they have different needs? Or is it really the same as what Madison needs?
You know, I can't say that I have a real sense of that yet from the conversations that I've had, just because they've been limited in the few weeks that I've been with the league. My guess is that there would be similarities and differences.
Yeah, they do tend to be, well, we get a lot of calls from municipal attorneys. I don't think people realize that. You know, they think, well, we have a municipal attorney. Yep. And they know Claire's been doing this for 27 years. So there is a lot of that. But small communities tend to be more frugal, I would say. Not that Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay aren't. They certainly are. But small towns are just run on a shoestring. And they're also very appreciative of the support that you provide. So you looking forward? Our annual conference is this month. You're going to be there, right?
I will, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm excited to see what it's all about.
Now, the other thing that the league legal people do is amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs, both on appellate level cases and Wisconsin Supreme Court. Was that something you always aspired to do? I mean, would you like to argue before the Supreme Court?
Well, I enjoy brief writing. I definitely enjoyed that. The little I did in law school, I really enjoyed it. I like to be able to take a stance and, you know, get behind something. Exactly. Arguing before the Supreme Court would be an honor, though very intimidating.
They're just people under those robes.
This is true.
So, but that gets back to, I got a kick out of your early definition of the law, and you talked about, you know, diving into the meaning of a word. And that's just sort of, that speaks to me of someone who's really got kind of a research bend in their mind.
Yeah, and it's what I liked about contract drafting too, because words matter, punctuation matters, and it's kind of a lot of precision, but it's just, the only way I've ever been able to describe it really is like a puzzle. You got to put all the pieces together and then see what kind of picture it paints at the end. But yeah, I love to research. I like to problem solve, I think, is what it boils down to. And so if you give me an issue to research, it's like a challenge, and I like to try and find a solution.
Well, I'm sure we're going to challenge you with a whole lot of things you probably haven't even thought of yet. Just ask Claire.
I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Okay. My guest on the local perspective is Maria Davis. Maria is the new Assistant Legal Counsel for the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. The last person in your job was there for 17 years. Claire's been there 27 years. Kurt's been there 32 years. So we will see you probably in about 20, 30 years. Can you even conceive of that sort of tenure in one place? And what does that say about the place?
I mean, I think it speaks volumes. From what I've seen, the league is, it's like a family. I think people seem to be very rewarded in their work and also with their coworkers. And to me, that's really important. And you don't typically stay somewhere for that long if you don't like what you're doing and who you're doing it with.
Well, welcome to the family.
Thank you.
Maria Davis, this is The Local Perspective, and I'm Jerry Deshane. Have a good day.